Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition, a nightly edition of PromoHomo.TV. This is a very special episode of Notes from Hollywood, which spotlights and profiles people passionately pursuing professions in the entertainment industry. Tonight, I'm not talking about a queer film, but this film has been created by a queer film director, Dan Watt. And he has a really powerful story. One of the things I like about Dan's story in particular is he's someone that continues to go for his own dreams. And one of my goals in a lot of what I do is to inspire people to identify and follow their own dreams. But this particular film, it hits Amazon Prime's video on demand this month. I've shared a link in the comments with the video. I also have put the Amazon link in the stories associated with this video across the various platforms that I reach. So Everybody Dance is a documentary that dives into the transformative world of art as it empowers and emboldens children with neurological differences and disabilities. The film follows 5 kids as they experience the thrill of movement and belonging in preparing for their dance recital. We share in their struggles and triumphs that all kids feel as they, along with their families and dance teacher, discover the rhythm of inclusivity and acceptance. So that is a little bit about the film. And I think that this would be a really great time to watch the film's trailer. So let's do that right now.
Get off stage, get off stage, get off stage. We're about to start the show. Cue lights.
I just feel like I'm not normal. Because when I'm at school or something, I just feel really out of place.
A lot of kids have been told for so long that they are different, that they believe it.
I'm trying to combat that, but it's just become a fear of mine of being excluded.
People tend to judge, but all kids have the ability to be successful.
All right, let's see it. 1, 2, 3. 1. The arts are an amazing equalizer. That's why I call it ballet for all kids, because in my class, they're all learning ballet. And the benefits of ballet: self-esteem, self-confidence, focus, motor skills. The list goes on and on and on. That's for any kid. But what that does to a kid who's been told their whole life that they're different and they're not as good as the rest of the world, it's miraculous. They're gonna open the curtains. Okay? Are we ready? Are we set?
So before it hit video on demand, Everybody Dance was screened in multiple film festivals, and I just I haven't seen the film yet, but I can imagine that it's a tearjerker, probably happy tears. So I'm going to be back with producer-director Dan Watt, but also in this episode, I'm going to reveal some very personal information that most of you do not know, and that I'm pretty sure that Dan Watt doesn't know either about me, but it relates to tonight's subject matter. So I'll be back with Dan after this. Dan Watt is coming up in just a moment, but I want to let you know that if you're having merch envy when you see me here in this fabulous sweatshirt, you can get the merch on Amazon, and you can also get it from the merch link at PromoHomo.TV. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. The arrow would be pointing to it right now. And if you watch my show on Facebook, you'll see a bell symbol that shows up during the broadcast. If you click on that, you'll be reminded of future broadcasts. I do really want all of you to start watching me on YouTube because Facebook is just very complicated. Most of my viewers come from Facebook, but frankly, I want everyone to move over and start watching me on YouTube. So that's what I'm going to start encouraging people to do. This is a live show. And one of my PromoHomo.TV superstars, I'll talk about them in a minute, Lance Druckerman has tuned in. He and his husband, Gary Stewart, are voluntary subscribers to the free content here. And one of my new viewers that watches every single episode of my show, thank you, Christian Ortega, he says, "Hola, muchas gracias, amigo." And he also says, yes, Jesus. I'm going to say like that's yes, Jesus, and it's probably an affirmation in response to the very powerful movie trailer. So, speaking of a powerful movie trailer, and as I have explained, the film is Everybody Dance. Let's bring to the episode right now producer-director Dan Watt. Hi, Dan. Welcome to PromoHomo.TV and Notes from Hollywood.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for having me. I love your show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know this has been an action-packed day of interviews. This is the 5th interview of the day that you're doing, the first television interview. I'm happy to say there is an important reason that you chose October for your video-on-demand release of Everybody Dance. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I waited till October because October is Down syndrome and spina bifida awareness month, and I feature kids in the film that have both of those disabilities, and I thought, why not use October as also a way to raise awareness and enlighten people on the cause.
I think that's wonderful, and I know a term that used to be used that is no longer used, and I just want to educate our audience that we don't use this term anymore, is handicapped. Now the term, I believe, is differently abled. What is the empowered, respectful, and loving language that we can use to describe people dealing with these challenges?
It's a very tricky subject because different groups prefer different things, and what they recommend is that you ask the person you're talking to. But since I'm not talking to one particular person to find out how they want to be talked to, what they said is they are embracing the word disabilities again. So it is okay to say that these are kids with different disabilities. They're shying away from differing abilities and going back to actually just saying disabilities.
Well, that's good to know, and I love it that you brought out that we should always ask an individual how they want to be described. That's always the best thing, and that's why I don't do it in every episode, but my pronouns are he, him, and his. I mean, that's another thing where we don't know what someone's pronouns are unless we ask them. So, how did you personally happen to choose a film about this subject matter to make?
Well, I used to be a dancer in my earlier career, and I went from dancing to, as I got older, I was asked to choreograph some things. And then from there, I became a dance captain of a dance company that I was in. And they would send me out ahead of time to do the stage lights and make sure all the cues were ready, and the company would come in the next day. So I had started to slowly cross over to the production side of it. And I remember specifically I was doing a dance routine in that company, and he brought up whoever brought up green lights, and they should have been blue. And instead of enjoying enjoying my performance, I'm like, that man is in the wrong cue. Oh no, oh no. And I thought, uh-oh, it's time for me to move into production 100% because I was more concerned about that at that time. So that's what I did. Then I just started investigating more and started choreographing and then directing musicals and then producing them myself. So it was a natural transition from being a performer, a dancer, performer to choreographer, teacher to then producer. And after about 10 years of doing that on the stage, I had done every musical I wanted to do. And I brought, shows like Carol Channing and Dixie Carter and Melissa Manchester and B. Arthur. I brought all their shows into the theater that I wanted to work in film and television. So I took the leap and did that.
So, what city and what theater were you doing this big name
Well,
production in?
I live in south of Los Angeles in the city of Torrance, and it's the Torrance Cultural Arts Center, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's a 500-seat theater, and while I was while I was still a dance teacher and a choreographer, I also ran the South Bay Conservatory. I was their department head for musical theater, dance, and drama. So I also oversaw their productions and helped with the hiring of teachers there. And it was just time for me to move on.
So, you were inspired to move into production and then filmmaking. But in between, I think it's fascinating. Tell me about how you ended up. We're going to talk more about the film Everybody Dance, but tell me how you ended up being closely associated with the Golden Girls, in particular, B. Arthur.
Well, like I said, I brought her show to the Torrance Cultural Arts Center. I also started a nonprofit organization called the Art Attack Foundation, and we raise money for scholarships for kids in all areas of the performing arts. And I did that because I would not be where I am today without scholarship funding and work study programs at studios, because I remember my mom and dad said, we can pay for 3 classes, and if you need more than that, either need to pay for it or try to find scholarships. So it was time for me to give back, so I started that, and I brought her in to be the opening gala. I thought I needed somebody to kick it off, and who else embodies the arts than B. Arthur. So I called her, and she actually said yes. And I had never met her before, and she said, if my boys will fly in from New York, meaning Billy Goldenberg, her piano player and her hair and makeup guy, if they're willing to fly in. She came out of retirement and did the show. And what happened after we did 2 sold out shows, we were backstage, and she said, do you want to work for me? And I got baffled, and I was, a bit stunned, and I said, oh, okay. And she shook my hand, and in her deep voice, and she said, see you on Saturday. And she just turned with that chin raised and just walked out the back door. And I just sat there as the lights were going off in the theater going, well, I think I work for B. Arthur now.
So she wanted, when she said see you Saturday, she meant in her LA area home?
At her house, yeah. And then she called me Wednesday and told me come up at 11, and that was that. And then I started working for her. And
what you were a personal assistant? You did
yeah, I was a
everything?
personal assistant, and then we became good friends. But it started out where a fan mail. She would always get requests for to do her one-woman show and TV appearances and all that kind of stuff. So I would handle, the contracts would come in, and I would get her to sign them and send them back. The yes, the no's, a ton of letters. People wanting to give her the key to the city, and for me to respectfully decline, and a ton of requests for donations, or will you support this charity or that charity. So it was my job to go through all that and organize that, and keep a record of what was going on. And and then she did the show in Vegas because Billy wanted to do it, and I went to Vegas with her. And then when they released the Golden Girls DVDs, That was a big to do. And went to Chicago and New York and, the LA of that. And I was her date to the TV Land Awards. So, yeah.
So she would respectfully decline a lot of like keys to the city. What are some of the things that she said yes to, and why?
Well, it had to be mean something to her and be close to her heart. So, animal causes and LGBTQ causes always went to the top of the list, and it was my job to to organize that and present those to her first. There's an amazing organization in New York City called the Ali Forney Center, and if anybody has knows anything about B or does research on the internet, she did a concert for them in New York to raise money uh, to get it going, and then she donated over $300,000 in her will when she passed away. And they actually there's a house built in New York, a brownstone that they refurbished, and it's a house where kids that have been thrown out by their parents because of of them being gay, she couldn't understand that. She said, "Why would you throw your child out because he's gay?" So she gave them the $300,000, and they bought the property, and it is the B. Arthur House.
Well, that is A, fantastic,
Yeah.
and B, I remember hearing the news about that and hearing about what they went and did with that endowment. It's none of my business, and you can tell me this, but you are on my show, and I'm an interviewer. Because of what you just said, it would be ridiculous of me not to say, "Were you in her will?"
No, not at the end, but she took care of us along the way. Yeah.
Well, of course you did, and you know what? There's no expectation that someone's assistant should be in their will, and I don't
Right.
want to imply that she didn't do anything wrong by not putting you in her will.
Right, and I didn't
But
even expect it. Yeah.
No, of course not. Of course not. But like I said, that would have been
Right.
weird not to ask that question. All right. So, how did you decide? How did you end up working for Simon Cowell for 5 years?
Well, when I
And
decided,
which 5 years were they? What were his
right.
big projects at the time?
I know it's a funky timeline. So after I made the decision to stop producing theater, I applied for a job at Columbia Pictures, and I was kind of shocked that they hired me, because I didn't anticipate getting hired by Columbia Pictures. It was the second place that I applied. But what they told me is they said, "Dan, you have all the skill sets. You've produced, everything that needs to be done. You just have to transfer it now to film and television." So they
So
put me
you
in
were
the
producing in film and television?
well, they put me in their development department, so I would read the scripts and take notes and would go to the set on some of them. There was the executive producer. I was just a coordinator. And then I did that for 5 years, and Simon Cowell was talking about doing the One Direction movie, because he had put that group together but wasn't sure yet. So he poached me, and I went over there because I thought, well, that's exactly what I want to do, is documentaries. I don't want to, you know, I learned a lot of Columbia Pictures in the scripted area, but I didn't want to do that. I always loved real stories. So I thought, well, that would be great. So then I hopped over there and worked on the One Direction documentary. And I met Morgan Spurlock there. He was the director of it, and he helped me with this movie. He held my hand through the whole thing when I decided to go out as an independent producer. So yeah, I worked for Simon for 5 years with X Factor, AGT, and I was the coordinator of the scripted film and television department. Um, but then we always, it was a very, very small office, so we always helped out with X Factor and AGT also. So, and he is an amazing, amazing man.
He's probably totally sweet in person and nothing like his evil persona that he manifests at times in his judging role.
To quote him, 100%. That's what he always says on America's Got Talent. Yeah, yeah, he really truly is, and he is on your side, and he will be your cheerleader, and he will promote you from within. He will listen to your ideas, because he said you never know who's going to have the next big idea. He said no one believed in him when he came to America to sell AGT. I tell this story because he went, I think it was 11 times. Everybody told him no. And he had already gone to Fox and they turned him down. And he was on the way to the airport and he went one more time. And he swung by and went up and talked to the head of Fox. And the head of Fox's wife was there because they were going out to lunch. And he said, I'm going to just one more time. I just want to ask you, do you want to do a take on this pop star or whatever it was called over in Britain? And the wife said, you produce pop star in Britain? And he said, yes. And she turned to her husband and said, you need to buy the show. It is going to be huge. So he went back that 11th time and they bought the show. And, that's my inspiration when I went to try to pitch this movie to get it distributed and they said no, and they said no, and they said no. I would remember that story that Simon said. And I said, they turned Simon Cowell down. I can keep going too, just like he did.
Um, I'm happy to say that one of my loyal viewers is saying hello, and it's nice to see you in the Philippines. I appreciate that they have tuned in. So,
Wow.
at times, a regular viewer, it depends on the Philippines time zone and mine, but it's great to see you. Thank you for watching. So, how did you then come up with the specific idea of this film and this group of people and this story?
Well, I knew I wanted to make a movie about how the arts, studying the arts, how you could apply those disciplines in everyday life. I've always been fascinated about people who might not have made a career out of it and did taking piano lessons. How did you apply that in your life later? You know, dance lessons, singing lessons. So that was my initial idea. And I actually had a dream about this woman, Fran, and her two daughters who studied with me. And I'm talking like, 17, 18 years ago when I taught. And her two daughters both had autism. And I taught them, and I had this dream. And I woke up and I thought, well, that's weird. Why did you dream about, Fran and her two daughters? And I didn't give it any more thought after that. And I had a dream about them 2 weeks later. And I thought, you know what? This is God poking me saying, this is your movie, dude. I'm giving you your movie. Here it is. So I trusted my gut and I thought that's my way in to how the arts can help people in everyday life. So I started doing research for different studios and conservatories across America. And I stumbled across Bonnie, and I wasn't thinking it had to be dance. It could have been anything. But once I met Bonnie, the owner and teacher, I fell in love because
And the name of her school
it's
is,
called Ballet for All Kids.
and how long? I know this must be revealed in the documentary, but how long has she been doing this important work?
I'm really not sure, but it had been quite a few years because the studio had was up and running, and a lot of students. So I'm not sure if it was around for 5 or 6 years, but it was something like that where she was established. But what makes her so different than a lot of the other places I interviewed across the country is they actually take a full hour ballet class every day. Yeah, every day that they're there. It's not like 5 minutes of ballet and then they put out mats and they put on music and the kids run around the room like it's recess. And it could be like a babysitting service and the parents could go shopping, and there's a place for that. But she actually taught the discipline of ballet. And I met the kids and the families and I thought, this is it. This is my story and they need to be told. And the parents were also very willing to let me in, and here we are.
Well, the documentary is about these five students and their experience preparing for and being in this show. But then what happened along the way is at the same time they were being in a movie. How did that add to their experience? And I imagine there were some screenings where they were present. And if that's the case, what was it like for you to be in a live audience with the kids at the screening, at which point that live audience is not only applauding you, the filmmaker, and the film, but the kids that are there to watch themselves on film?
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, when I was actually filming, I made it very I think I think this was the perfect movie for me to make, I'll say, because having been a teacher and also produced shows on stage, it gave me insight that a lot of other producers wouldn't have had. Because I when I started teaching, I told the parents, I mean, started filming, I told the parents and Bonnie, I do not want to disrupt your class. So we decided that we could only take one camera up there because the studio was small and we didn't want any of the kids to be upset. So I went up there a few times just for them to get used to me. Ben, my cameraman, did, and then we started filming, and then they just got used to seeing us every Saturday, and then they would give me a hug. But it's like any group of kids. Some were shy, some wanted a hug, some would just poke Ben's camera. Some would say, "Why aren't you dancing? You're in the dance class. You need to dance too." So I wanted to blend in and just become part of the family and not disrupt it. And when the film was screened, we actually made it into the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, which is a big deal. And a lot of the families came up there to see it. And it was amazing. It was nice for, first of all, some of them were shocked that they were up there on such a big screen. And one little angel, Ailey, was like, "Well, that's not really me. That's pretending to be me." So they had their own little ways to describe what they were up on stage. But we got a standing ovation, and the audience went absolutely crazy. So the kids got to feel the love. Again, they felt the love the day of the recital, after they did the actual live performance, and for them to be able to relive that, seeing the recital on film, and they actually got to see themselves dance, from a different, they actually got to watch themselves dance. They weren't just performing. So that touched my heart, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the house that day.
Well, that's beautiful. Now, I said at the top of the show I was going to reveal some very personal information. It's not a secret, but when I was a kid, I wasn't very strong. I wasn't athletic. I could barely do a pull. I've never done a pull up in my whole life. And in high school, I had a muscle biopsy, and there was this thought that I might have a neuromuscular disease, and it was inconclusive. And I basically went on and did significant things, and I didn't have a life that was diminished in terms of what I could do that a lot of people with much more severe issues experience. And so, for example, I did California AIDS Ride 2 right when it started. I did ride a bicycle from San Francisco to LA. I did back-to-back aerobics classes. There were things that I was doing. But in recent years, I've had a significant shift in my ability to walk, my ability to navigate stairs, and ultimately, through a long diagnostic process and DNA testing, I found out that I have a rare neuromuscular disease. It falls under the category of muscular dystrophy, and it's called Nemaline myopathy. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that I have Nemaline myopathy because of the impact it's had on me versus the impact it can and does have on others. So, for example, I ultimately went around and I did a hashtag Nemaline myopathy on Instagram, and there's very young kids in wheelchairs on respirators, and it's a very different disease in different people based upon its time of onset. So I don't want to feel like I should receive any special treatment or rewards or accolades by identifying that I have this when no one else in the world would even know that I have this. But in my own life, I know that I'm having it. I'm experiencing differences, and I am looking at, to what extent this will impact me
Mhm.
in the future.
Yeah, I think I think that that's the thoughts of these kids don't know any different. The only way time that they usually feel different is when someone points it out to them. Because the autism spectrum is so vast, and it can go there were kids in class who loved to be touched, and they liked uh the sensory pressure. And then there's some that don't like it at all. They don't want to be touched. There are kids in the film who sound sound irritates them, so if the music is too loud. And I think that we as a society need to be able to realize that everybody's different, and we all have quirks. We all have things we like and don't like, things we can do, we can't do. My mom had horrible arthritis. It's now affecting my hip. So I have to adjust my life because that's happening. And I think that it's just that nobody wants pity. And I'm excited that the reviewers of the film and my story is getting across that they don't want that they just want to be included, and they're just living their lives. Everybody has obstacles. We have to figure out how to go around them. And that makes me no different than them, you know?
Well, I appreciate learning more about your journey, and then beginning and ending our conversation with the spotlight on this really important, powerful film. What's up next for you?
Well, I'm actually working on another documentary. It is untitled, and I'm unable to talk about it at the moment, but I can say that I'm working with the Tony Award winner and Pulitzer Prize winning uh, producer Daryl Roth, who did Kinky Boots in New York. She's done a lot. So her and I are working on a project together.
Well, that is wonderful. I really hope that you look me up. So Lance is sharing he has ankylosing spondylitis, and all of us have our own journey and our own stories, and we need to honor our own experiences, and don't make them any less than or more than others' experiences. There are experiences, just like the kids in your film are having their experiences. And I love that you talk about they don't know they're different unless someone tells them, because I love the fact that there is a great possibilities for people to experience joy and wonder and life without that added stigma and lens put upon them.
Well, and watching this movie, you get to hear the kids and the parents. It's their stories. It's in their words, and that will give. I think my goal and my dream is that it will enlighten people, because it enlightened me. These kids came together. Uh, if we would just focus on the similarities, these kids all came together with one goal and one purpose, and that was to put on a dance show. And I think, like, how cool is that? They just walk in that room and they just adjust and make it work, and learn the choreography. And Bonnie might make have to change it for this one or that one to make it work for them. But that happens in every walk of life.
Well, once again, thank you for being on the show. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion?
No, I thank you very much for having me. I really do enjoy your show, so I'm glad we were able to connect and work this out.
Well, I appreciate it, Dan. Hang tight. I'll talk to you after the show. And for
Cool.
all of you who are watching, I'm coming to you now it's a huge undertaking. I'm accomplishing it. I'm working a full-time job to help finance my network, and with your support and additional advertisers, the sky's the limit. But I'll be back Monday night. This is a Friday night when this is going out, and Monday is October 10th, 2022, and it is, oh, and Lance says, wonderful show. Thank you, Lance. So October 10th is Indigenous Peoples Day, and I'm going to have my high school friend and my good friend for all of my life, Patty Talahanga, who's Hopi, on the show to talk about it. So that's what's happening tomorrow. I look forward to you joining me, and thanks again, Dan.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.